There is no Jewish media cabal, mafia. That is a figment of either your imagination or a projection of a prejudice.
Rabbi, may I ask you a question?
Certainly, Labish.
Is there a proper blessing for the Tsar?
A blessing for the Tsar, of course. May God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us.
For the Jews of Eastern Europe, there were three ways to flee. The first was to stay where you were and participate in some Marxist or socialist movement where you could become part of a labor organization that would in turn create a great regime, a socialist regime in which Jews could be accepted as equals. A very small minority began to dream about Palestine. Very small numbers of people became Zionists. You needed a great deal of ideological dexterity to talk yourself into getting on a boat and going to Palestine at the turn of the century. The vast majority of Jews, 2 million out of 2.5 million, who left Eastern Europe to find their dream, went to America. The smart money was on America. It was the simple place where you could imagine the dream of Jews having both opportunity for tolerance and also economic security.
I never said the Jews control Hollywood, but Jewish people have said that. We can share an article of a link here, that was published in the LA Times a couple of years ago, where a Jewish man wrote, "Let's face it, we do run Hollywood." That was totally fine a couple of years ago. Maybe he's anti-Semitic though. Pardon?
Never fun. It's not ever been fun.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that like this was something, this has been said, and it's actually funny because I was reading a very old article yesterday, forgetting the guy's name, I'm blanking on him, but he was the founder of Screw magazine. He's a Jewish guy, Al something. I'm blanking on his name. Anyways, he gave a very long interview about how, the Jews hire the Jews when they get into Hollywood. And like I said, this was said not 100 years ago. So this was something that many Jewish people have said. But sure, I guess you're saying that now it's a trope. But I just want to be clear that many Jewish people have said this in many interviews within the last 50 years. Okay.
As I said, there's
now,
a whole book.
I do want to press pause on that and ask you a question. Is it possible for Jewish people to form a gang, full stop?
Define gang.
To form a gang.
I mean, let me phrase that because I don't even need to ask that question. The answer is, of course, because there were Jewish gangs in New York.
Okay, yes, of course. Common sense that Jewish people can form a gang, Black people can form a gang, gangs exist, will always exist, Jewish gangs have existed and will always exist. Worldwide, gangs happen. How absurd it is to say that if you think that there is a gang that is operating, to even suggest that there might be a person in the gang, that is automatically a trope. That would mean it would be impossible for us to illustrate the gang existing. As soon as you say it's a trope and magically you can't talk about it, I gave examples of multiple people in Hollywood, okay? We're talking about from Dave Chappelle to Kanye West to Cat Williams to other artists that are Christian that have said that there is some sort of a gang, full stop, that is operating in Hollywood. I then gave an example of a list of exact names that Michael Jackson said were operating as a gang. Rabbi Shmuley was among that list of people. So to say that we can't even explore that possibility, that Rabbi Shmuley, and that this list that somebody is giving or something that artists are saying might be true is somehow anti-Semitic.
Each of these studios had artists under contract and a very distinct personality and house style. They dominated the industry by not only producing, but also distributing and showing the films.
There's a very romantic notion that Hollywood movies were made by artists. The director and the writer and to a certain extent the stars actually made these movies. Those were the real artists, and these guys were only businessmen. I would place the artistic sensibility not with the director, but with the studio head. And for those who say, well, this is ridiculous, I would say, from beginning to end, the executive had the primary input into the picture and supervised every aspect of production, over and above the fact that beyond any individual picture, It was the executive who created the entire studio apparatus. Every producer who worked there, every director who worked there, every writer who worked there, and every star who worked there was part of the larger system that was created by the Hollywood Jews.
I'm not sure that there was an, quote, American dream before the Jews came to Hollywood and invented it. What you had was a westward movement, and you had the idea of freedom, but you didn't have what we have today, which is a popular culture that creates dreams. That's a dream factory.
This was a world of clapboard houses with broad verandas and white picket fences, gleaming streets and shops with friendly picture windows. The moguls created the images, the icons, and the visual forms that we identify with the American way of life.
They created their own America, an America which is not the real America. It's their own version of the real America. But ultimately, this shadow America becomes so popular and so widely disseminated that its images and its values come to devour the real America. And so the grand irony of all of Hollywood is that Americans come to define themselves by the shadow America that was created by Eastern European Jewish immigrants who weren't admitted to the precincts of the real America.
Americans of every faith try to take the values we learn from our religions and put them to work in our communities. No one has done that better than the Americans who do the work of B'nai B'rith.
As you may or may not know, the American dream was created by the Jewish community. So if you believe in a white picket fence and a nice home, some of that dream has gone global. That can be considered the Australian dream or the Kiwi dream or whatever country you're in, UK dream. The idea of a picket fence and a nice home and this world that is very bouncy and joyful, and it seemed bouncy and joyful for mainly people that had fairer skin, but that whole belief of an idea of the American dream was created by the studio heads that controlled television. They told a vision through channels for programming on their networks. Do you understand? You're in their network. Same with social media. Social media is a network. It's called internet. You enter the net and they capture you and what your interests are. Same thing with social media. Social media is the same thing, but social media is a beautiful thing in a way. It's just you shouldn't be on Facebook anymore at this point because Facebook is controlled by the CIA. It's been clearly made and addressed that they've been co-opted. And also Google, you got to be a little bit careful with as well too, with like Gmail or certain things of that sort. But these platforms have been captured because your information is now the resource, because they get to build a digital database on everyone. Kind of the point of C19 was to build digital profiles around health that can be built up later, connected to your social media for social credit. All of that centralization. So I want to cover this portion on the control within the film and TV community, how propaganda works, and you might just along the way discovered the Mossad or the Israeli intelligence being somewhat involved in Hollywood. Clearly we know Harvey Weinstein used a company called Black Cube to go and attack his victims, which they were former IDF and also former Mossad agents running pretty much a private investigator firm. Yeah, so I think it's pretty important that you learn about how much control has been in Hollywood. Along the way, you may discover some facts about Benjamin Netanyahu here, which is very important because Benjamin Netanyahu has a very interesting past, along with losing his brother due to his brother being involved in, some things with espionage and such on and so forth, including Netanyahu. So it's important that you know who's running the show over there because it's affecting the entire planet. You might just find out who took out JFK. Sit back and enjoy.
I'm going to take you through a sequence. 1979, a guy called Issa Harel was interviewed by an American Christian Zionist journalist. Issa Harel was called the father of Israeli intelligence, Mr. Big. He was involved for a massive amount of time.
Harel was born in Vitebsk, Russia, in 1912. He immigrated to Palestine in 1930 and joined the Haganah, the Jewish Defense Force. Harel retired from Mossad in 1963. He died in 2003 at the age of 91.
And he said to this journalist in 1979 that he thought there was going to be an attack by Muslim extremists on your biggest building in New York. And that they would do this because in their philosophy, also in the philosophy of the Kabbalah, by the way, and that whole area of thought, they represent a phallic symbol of America, and it would break the spirit of America, basically, that kind of theme. Also in 1979, a man called Benjamin Netanyahu organized a conference in Jerusalem and then organized another one in '84 in America, focusing on Arabic terrorism and the need to have preemptive strikes on countries to stop terrorism.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest
responsibility
is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is
also interesting is, remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us, from us, from us. There is no Jewish media cabal, mafia. That is a figment of either your imagination or a projection of a prejudice.
Chris Cuomo has been trying to desperately censor news about the WikiLeaks scandal because that would obviously hurt Hillary Clinton. Take a look.
What do you think Donald Trump needs to do to come out on top?
Well, on the character issue, the public, 2/3 or more of the public knows that Hillary Clinton's a liar. She can't be trusted. And now the two faces of Hillary Clinton are coming out. The fact through WikiLeaks that she says one thing and...
Oh, no. All right, let's see if we can get Congressman Collins back. Obviously, we just lost his satellite feed. That sucks.
And...
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no.
I wonder if he know that I know he's lying right now.
And in full disclosure, let's take a look at what is in there and what it means.
Always lying to me. Why? You lying so much. Why? You making it hard for me.
Yeah. She does take quite a while longer. What happens to other folks who want a chance to run against her?
Because she's doing what they call in politics freezing pockets. Because the donors are giving her money thinking she's going to run. That means they're not going to have available money for other candidates if she doesn't. And I don't think she's going to give it to them.
She's on her way to deciding.
We'll see.
About deciding.
We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign. So gotcha, bitch. We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign.
No shit.
You say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 There is something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow on our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it.
Senator Moynihan proposed a bill to dismantle the CIA.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Introduced it twice. The second time was 1995. Ironically, 1 year later in 1996, the CIA established the Entertainment Liaison Office, which was specifically penetrated into Hollywood, and Chase Brandon was actually co-wrote scripts. For example, The Recruit.
We're looking for high horsepower, high energy, very competitive people who are driven by patriotism and a sense of wanting to serve a greater cause.
I am recruiting you. Would I have to kill anyone? Would you like to?
There's no question about the fact that Mockingbird is real. It started out paying journalists in major media, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, to print fake stories that the CIA wanted in the press and fake interviews. And this was revealed in the Church Committee.
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across which might not be true. We were interested in targeting those reporters who could get their material in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and so forth. And once again, I want to make it perfectly clear that we were not hiring these reporters. They were not operating as our spies or as our dupes. But in a war situation, when there are so few sources of information, a reporter may rely on a CIA contact, and he becomes vulnerable. If I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him, and he'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact, what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place, via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts.
Well, the FBI is responding to Elon Musk's exposing the Twitter files. The FBI claims they did not request employees to take action on Hunter Biden's laptop. The Bureau says they did not send Twitter any, quote, specific instructions or details regarding the Hunter Biden laptop story and the evidence of influence peddling on it. And that, quote, it is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. That is just not true.
Now that Elon Musk purchased Twitter, and he's finding that, you know, they literally had FBI people embedded in Twitter that were holding back information from him. Like there was a guy that he fired that was an FBI guy that worked for the FBI at one point in time and now was one of the head guys at Twitter and was withholding information from him while he was trying to release information about, allegedly, I should say allegedly so I don't get in trouble here with this. What he was saying essentially was this person was a bottleneck to releasing this data. Where they were trying to find out, like, why did President Trump get banned? You know, what was going on in terms of shadow banning conservative people, and how much coordination was going on inside the company to try to suppress certain ideologies and magnify other ones. And it's pretty stunning.
Yes, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the clips.
You said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No,
I'll go find the clips.
First of all, you just saw the clips.
I'm
not chuckling. I'm listening to Don.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh, my God. What person? You know, you talk about, like, you know, cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer. Really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
Shame them. They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now.
Chris,
you can't apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not being
You were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation where we were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was going to do to them. Look, I'm taking the drug right now. Obviously, I don't think it's all poison.
We entered a previously unimaginable time of modern technology. Advances that allowed the rulers of this world to construct and direct our stories in ways we previously never imagined. As a result, new techniques to control the population were realized. These are the people from the companies that we have trusted to deliver us our news and tell our stories. This has always been about controlling what we as the population think and hear. They help create our culture and influence our society. We as citizens only trust them because as a society, we think that the gatekeepers have our best interest in mind.
The dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts, and it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job. That is our job. That is our job. Our job.
You've heard the anti-Semitic tropes. Jews run the banks, Jews manipulate space lasers, Jews pull the strings and make world leaders dance.
The red are the executives that are Jewish.
new revelations in the trial of Netanyahu. A Hollywood producer on Sunday accused the Israeli Prime Minister of demanding lavish gifts in exchange for favors. Testifying by video link from Brighton in the United Kingdom, Arnon Milchan told a Jerusalem court how Netanyahu and his wife had received expensive cigars and crates of champagne. In exchange, Netanyahu allegedly helped Milchan secure a US visa extension and also pushed tax breaks that would have benefited the producer. Netanyahu appeared in court for Milchan's testimony, and in Brighton, Israeli protesters surrounded the hotel where the producer was speaking.
This is part of the greater protest movement that's happening right now in Israel. We're following them wherever they are in the world to make sure that they know that this will not going to happen.
Milchan, whose credits include Pretty Woman, Gone Girl and LA Confidential, described how Netanyahu had complained that some of the cigars were the wrong diameter, while his wife had taken issue with the type of champagne they received. The gifts allegedly included jewelry with a value of around $200,000. The trial began in 2020 and is one of 3 corruption cases that Netanyahu is facing. He and his wife deny any wrongdoing. The testimony comes as Netanyahu's government resuscitates controversial judicial reforms that it had put on ice in March in the face of widespread protests. Critics claim that the reforms, which reduce the power of Israel's Supreme Court, are intended to shield Netanyahu from the corruption charges.
To once again try to ruin the Israeli democracy by making horrible laws that only goal is to destroy the democracy of Israel, to destroy any balance between the different branches of the government in order to make it a dictatorship at the end of the day.
Israel has faced a period of prolonged political instability with 5 elections in the last 4 years. And these latest allegations will only serve to deepen an already polarized nation. Rupert Stone, TRT World.
Thank you.
There is no Jewish media, cabal, mafia. That is a figment of either your imagination or a projection of a prejudice.
Oh, fuck, that was good. I want to show you some of the movies that my dear friend, who I love, made, supported, and we all thank him for it. Seymour, play the reel.
Listen to you would still be rolling drunks for a living.
You broke? You'll carry that stink of the streets with you the rest of your life.
I like the stink of the streets. It makes me feel good. I like the smell of it. It opens up my lungs.
Who are you? Oh, I have so many names. I'm here on the ground with my nose in it since the whole thing began. God likes to watch. He's an absentee landlord.
Keanu Reeves.
Really interesting.
The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail.
The housing market is rock solid.
Come on out. I'm talking to you.
With a head full of classified information. The Russians want their man back before he cracks. We want you to negotiate the swap.
I'm an insurance lawyer.
I enjoyed the show. I write songs. Our lead singer just quit. Then you'll need someone new.
We had it all. You were a movie star, remember?
Who was this guy? He used to be Birdman.
I like that poster.
Calm her. She gets so nervous. Hey, Paul, come on, stop that. I was wondering if I could fuck you. Man, I don't do things like that. That's what makes it so nice. You don't. And you did.
Pull over now! Come here!
The FBI's top agent.
Hey, son, what are you doing here?
Going back undercover.
I'm gonna hide you. How you gonna hide a swag big as this?
But this time,
Are you ready for this?
he's got backup.
Ready for this?
Ladies and gentlemen, Arnon Milchan.
I started out with Puma, and he used to have a big share in Puma, and he looked at me and saw a lot of talent.
This is my Cinderella.
Here I am, 9 Grand Slams later, and I think he was right.
Right here at the end. Elizabeth, you're right. You're right. Hey, Jason, look up, please.
The work he's done for peace initiatives, the support he's given Israel itself, it's all wonderful work. And then, every now and then he throws me a movie. So to me,
it's a win-win.
He's a good guy. Well, I'm here to support Arnan, who's a dear friend, and that's about it. Basically, he asked me to come, and I'm happy to be here.
I mean, I said about 100 times no, because I'm shy. Then I realized it's for Israel, he can't say no. It's for Israel, he can't say no.
And congratulations on being honored with the Legacy of Citizens Lifetime Achievement Award.
I just revealed something the world has never seen before. A few weeks ago, Israel obtained 0.5 ton of Iran's secret nuclear weapons files. You want to see what that looks like? This is an exact copy of the material we got from Iran's secret atomic archive. That's over 100,000 original Iranian files and documents of blueprints for nuclear bombs, timelines for uranium enrichment, simulation of nuclear implosion, much more. This atomic archive proves one thing: Iran lied through its teeth. Of Saddam's attempts to conceal and deceive the world, to conceal the efforts that he's making at producing weapons of mass destruction. We in Israel have known this for a long time. We've shared this intelligence with the United States.
To understand JFK's assassination, first you need to understand Israel's nuclear program. Israel gave the United States false intelligence about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, and now Bibi's saying the same thing about Iran. But it gets worse. Bibi has the chutzpah to tell the United States to invade countries because of their nuclear programs. Meanwhile, he stole nuclear technology from the United States. They cry out in pain as they stab you in the back. Richard Kelly Smythe was sentenced to 40 months in prison. He was president of Milco, a company that worked with NASA. He obtained nuclear triggers and sent them to Heli Trading Company in Israel. One of his contacts in Heli was Bibi Netanyahu. Heli was owned by Israeli arms dealer Arnon Milchan, who went all over television admitting details of the nuclear smuggling ring.
Justin Timberlake, Vince Vaughn, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Just a few of the stars Hollywood producer Arnon Milchan has rubbed shoulders with. But it's his story that should be made into a movie. The Israeli-born businessman behind hits like 12 Years a Slave,
I have a business proposition for you.
Pretty Woman,
Come on, hit me before I lose my nerve.
and Fight Club, says he spent years as an Israeli secret agent and arms dealer. In a stunning interview that aired Monday on an Israeli investigative program, Milchan detailed how he was recruited in the 1960s to Israel's Bureau of Scientific Relations, where he helped gather technology to further Israel's still unacknowledged nuclear program, saying, quote, "I did it for my country, and I'm proud of it." Milchan moved to Hollywood in the 1970s, but he suggested his efforts on behalf of the Israeli government didn't end completely. Milchan indicated other big Hollywood players were also involved, saying, quote, "When I came to Hollywood, I detached myself completely from my physical activities to dedicate myself to what I really wanted, filmmaking. But sometimes it gets mixed up." The 68-year-old Milchan owns New Regency Films and has produced more than 120 movies, working closely with directors such as Martin Scorsese and Oliver Stone. He forged an especially close relationship with actor Robert De Niro, who was also featured in the Israeli television program.
I did ask him once, we spoke about something, and he told me that he was an Israeli and that he of course would do these things for his country.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
In a story that seems reminiscent to last year's Oscar-winning true-to-life film Argo that depicted the CIA-Hollywood collaboration to rescue U.S. diplomats stuck in Iran, it's a safe bet Hollywood execs will be fighting to bring this story to the big screen, too.
Today, the 68-year-old, now chairman of New Regency Films, is worth more than $4 billion and apologizes for nothing.
I should have said, you know what? I did it for my country, and I'm proud of it.
Can you imagine if a Russian got caught smuggling nuclear technology, then said, fuck you, I did it for my country? They would spend years in prison. Another example of Jewish privilege. Milchan is also a Hollywood producer. He produced The Medusa Touch in 1978, which featured an airplane flying into a building. In 1979, journalist Mike Evans met with the former head of Israeli intelligence, Isser Harel, and asked him if terror would ever come to America. Harel responded, "Yes, I fear it will come. I believe the first terror attack will be New York City's tallest building." Isser Harel, Israel's first spy master, said this in 1979. And Arnon Milchan, the Israeli spy, featured the same thing in a 1978 film.
So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
The idea of disclosure. Iran won't tell the truth. We had to go in there, is Israel's position, and steal this information so we can know the truth. Disclosure as an issue should work every way. The United States should say what it has. You know where I'm going with this. A yes-no question for you. Does Israel have nuclear capabilities and nuclear weapons? Yes or no?
We've always said that we won't be the first to introduce it, so we haven't introduced it.
But that's not an answer to the question. Do you have them or do you not?
Of any country. It's as good an answer as you're going to get. But I'll tell you one thing, Chris, and I think it's important. Iran signed the NPT.
Yes, and Israel hasn't. U.S. aid to Israel is illegal because they are a nuclear power who has not signed the NPT. The U.S. taxpayer has given Israel over $250 billion in welfare. This is illegal and it has to stop. In 2015, President Obama declassified documents revealing Israel's nuclear program. In 2008, former President Jimmy Carter said that Israel has over 150 nuclear weapons. In 2016, former Secretary of State Colin Powell said that Israel has 200 nuclear warheads pointed at Iran. Israeli nuclear technician Mordechai Benunu was sentenced to 18 years in prison for giving details of Israel's nuclear reactor in Dimona to the London Sunday Times. Dr. Avner Cohen, who worked for the Israeli government in religious affairs, wrote a book about Israel's nuclear reactor in Dimona, and he couldn't enter the country for several years.
Do you acknowledge that Israel has nuclear weapons?
I'm not. You can go read the newspapers about that.
You can't acknowledge that Israel has nuclear weapons, sir.
It is a well-known fact that Israel has nuclear weapons, but the Israeli government doesn't officially talk about what kinds of weapons and where, etc.
In 2016, Germany sold 3 nuclear submarines to Israel. Israel now has submarines that could destroy entire nations. Israeli military historian Martin van Creveld admitted that Israel has nukes targeting Europe. If it went on much longer, the Israeli government would lose control of the people. In campaigns like this, the anti-terror forces lose because they don't win, and the rebels win by not losing. I regard a total Israeli defeat as unavoidable. That will mean the collapse of the Israeli state and society. We'll destroy ourselves. But would the world permit such ethnic cleansing? That depends on who does it and how quickly it happens. We possess several hundred atomic warheads and rockets and can launch them at targets in all directions, perhaps even at Rome. Most European capitals are targets for our Air Force. Let me quote General Mossad: "Israel must be like a mad dog, too dangerous to bother." I consider it all hopeless at this point. We shall have to try to prevent things from coming to that, if at all possible. Our armed forces, however, are not the 30th strongest in the world, but rather the 2nd or 3rd. We have the capability to take the world down with us, and I can assure you that that will happen before Israel goes under.
Israel was determined to have a last line of defense it could rely on.
The notion is that Israel should have capability for the worst case scenario. In order to prevent Auschwitz and the memory of Auschwitz and the respect to Auschwitz, Israeli leaders felt that Israel should be in position to threaten with Hiroshima. And if, God forbid, Israel would have to face that kind of eventuality, Israel would have a weapon of last resort. That's what people call the Samson option.
The Samson option owed its name to the Jewish hero who killed many of the Israelites' enemies as he brought about his own death.
These are psychopaths. When they go down, they're taking whoever they can with them. But before the Samson option, they will use kill switches. This is something that former Unit 8200 goes into detail about in this Vice documentary listed. For years, JFK demanded inspections into Israel's nuclear reactor in Dimona. Prime Minister Ben-Gurion kept delaying the inspections. Then finally, JFK threatened to end support for Israel. Instead of allowing the inspection, Ben-Gurion resigned. JFK wrote a letter to new Prime Minister Levi Eshkol, once again threatening to end support for Israel. Next thing you know, Kennedy was assassinated, and no president since then has tried to stop Israel's nuclear program.
And then there's the assassination of United States President Kennedy in '63. We want to know who killed him and why. There was someone called Lee Harvey Oswald, who was then killed by one Jack Ruby. But why did he kill him? Jack Ruby, an Israeli, killed Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed Kennedy. Why did this Israeli kill Kennedy's killer? Then Jack Ruby, the killer of Kennedy, die in mysterious circumstances before he could be tried. We must open the files. The whole world knows that Kennedy wanted to investigate the Israeli Dimona nuclear reactor. This involves international peace and security and weapons of mass destruction. That is why we should open this file.
When President Kennedy was assassinated here in Dallas, Abraham Zapruder was standing on this concrete parapet with an 8mm camera. And with that camera, he recorded the tragedy. Mr. Zapruder, certainly no one had a better view of the assassination than you did.
Our purpose was to document the event.
In 2017, the US government released classified JFK assassination documents. Name of individual, Homer Echevarria. Reason for PRS interest, November 1963. Informant advised Chicago office that subject was a member of anti-Castro Cuban group. Subject allegedly approached informant to provide machine guns for Cuban revolution. November 21st, 1963. Subject allegedly told informant, "We now have plenty of money. Our new backers are Jews." as soon as we or they take care of Kennedy. The anti-Castro Cuban wasn't lying. Jim Garrison, the district attorney involved in the JFK investigation, told Playboy in a 1976 interview that Jewish mobster Jack Ruby smuggled arms to Cuban exile groups. Not just the CIA, but the Jewish mob also had interest in arming these Cuban exile groups. When Batista was in charge of Cuba, it was Las Vegas by the sea. Top Jewish American mobster Meyer Lansky put a lot of money into Cuba. But then Castro took over, shut down the casinos, and the mob lost big time. The Jewish mob played an important role in creating the State of Israel. They sent guns to Jewish terrorist groups in Palestine, such as Irgun, Stern Gang, and Haganah. Those guns were used to murder British officers and drive Palestinians off their land. Jewish mobster Myron Sugarman admits this in the video listed. He calls himself the last Jewish gangster, but that is not accurate. Today, the Jewish mob is alive and well, and they run Donald Trump. He does whatever they tell him to do. He's actually been in bed with them his entire career. It wasn't just the anti-Castro Cuban who bragged about JFK being killed beforehand. Jack Ruby's crew also bragged about it. Jim Garrison told Playboy, "I will give you one bit of evidence, recently uncovered by our office, that links Ruby to the conspiracy." 4 days before the assassination, on November 18, 1963, a young woman from Dallas, named Rose Sharami, was thrown from a moving car on a highway outside Eunice, Louisiana. She was badly bruised and taken to the East Louisiana Hospital in Jackson, Louisiana. When she came out of sedation, on November 19th, she was distraught and sobbed that she had been thrown out of the car by associates of a man named Jack Ruby in Dallas. She claimed to have been sent by Ruby from Dallas to Miami to pick up a shipment of narcotics. When asked by a hospital attendant, who fortunately took notes of her remarks in case the police had to be called in, why she had been hurled from the car, she replied that narcotic smuggling was one thing, but she drew the line at murder. The president, she said, was going to be killed in Dallas within a few days. At this point, sadly enough, the hospital authorities seemed to dismiss her as hysterical and lost interest in her story. No one believed her until it was too late. While JFK was demanding inspections into Dimona, his brother Robert Kennedy was head of the Justice Department, demanding that the American Zionist Council register as a foreign agent. The American Zionist Council went on to become AIPAC, which dominates the US political system today. Robert wanted to regulate the Israeli lobby. He ran for president, then was murdered by a Palestinian who didn't remember carrying out the act.
Senator Robert F. Kennedy assassinated minutes after winning the California presidential primary. He was allegedly shot by this man, Sirhan Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian immigrant. Sirhan was convicted of Kennedy's murder in 1969, but this morning, nearly 50 years later, Kennedy's son, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., tells the Washington Post that after reviewing autopsy results for months, he met with Sirhan in prison for 3 hours, walking away convinced Sirhan did not kill his father. One major discrepancy in the reports, Sirhan had a revolver that held only 8 bullets, but audio recovered from the scene reportedly recorded as many as 13 gunshots. Paul Schrade, a campaigner working for Kennedy, was one of the 5 other people who were hit by gunfire that night.
Sirhan was out of position, out of bullets, and could not have shot Robert Kennedy. My demand is a new investigation, an investigation of the second gunman, dead or alive, that they had never done and refused to do and didn't do back in 1968 and 69.
So what has led you to conclude that there was someone other than Sirhan who was shooting at Robert Kennedy?
Yes, we've concluded that Sirhan not only did not shoot Senator Kennedy, but could not have shot Senator Kennedy. And the reason for that is Sirhan was never in a position where he could shoot Senator Kennedy from behind, and Senator Kennedy was shot 4 times from behind.
Renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
After JFK was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson became president. Johnson was a puppet for Israel. He allowed Israel to attack the USS Liberty. The ship was flying an American flag, and Israel fired on it for 2 hours, dropping napalm, burning American servicemen alive. They even shot the life rafts. The USS Liberty was able to get a signal out and call for help, but Johnson and McNamara ordered the Sixth Fleet to stand down. Johnson lied about what happened on the Gulf of Tonkin to start a bombing campaign in Vietnam. Meanwhile, Israel attacks the USS Liberty, murdering 34 Americans and wounding over 170 others, and Johnson does absolutely nothing. This was an act of war.
In truth, if the United States held Israel to the same standards that it has applied to Iraq, Serbia, and other countries, American bombers and missiles would be blasting Tel Aviv, and American officials would be putting Israeli leaders behind bars for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
In JFK's diary, which was auctioned off, he wrote, "After visiting these 2 places, you can easily understand how that within a few years, Hitler will emerge from the hatred that surrounds him now as one of the most significant figures who ever lived. He had boundless ambition for his country, which rendered him a menace to the peace of the world. But he had a mystery about him in the way that he lived and in the manner of his death that will live and grow after him. He had in him the stuff of which legends are made." Hitler, JFK, and Gaddafi had boundless ambition for their countries, and it cost them their lives. There is a world order in place, and you must do as you're told. Israeli nuclear technician Mordecai Benunu, who spent 18 years in prison, said that Israel was behind JFK's assassination. If JFK ended US support for Israel, that would mean the end of the Jewish state. Jack Ruby, who killed Oswald to silence him, attended services at Congregation Cherith Israel. His rabbi, Hillel Silverman, visited him in prison, and Ruby said, "I did it for the Jewish people."
You know what? I did it for my country, and I'm proud of it.
Milchan also produced the 1991 film JFK, which avoided all the important details. They have you focusing your attention on what they want you to believe. Just like they want you to believe that Muslims orchestrated 9/11. In the 1978 film, Milchan featured an airplane crashing into a building, similar to what we saw on 9/11. In 1995, his employee, Bibi, wrote a book about militant Islam bringing down the World Trade Centers. Milchan also produced Fight Club, featuring this in 1999.
Trust me, everything's gonna be fine. You met me at a very strange time in my life.
With your feet on the air, your head on the ground. Try this trick and spin it. Yeah. You never collapse if there's nothing in it, and you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind?
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that episode. Stay tuned for the next part. Much love. Peace.
Bonus. Introduced to him by the Lady Rothschild.
Yeah, it's true, because Ghislaine's thing that she told me was that he was assigned to her to protect her because her dad had died. And I'm like, who assigned you? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? And when she was showing me pictures of her dad and crying over them, I had to sit with this bitch all the time and go through photo albums and I know her really well. And I know how she operates. And that's why I'm so afraid that she's still on the loose. And I know who's taking care of her. I know it is the Rothschild. I know it is. And I'll tell you how I know. Because Lady Rothschild is ready to kill me. Because she's best friends with
the Rothschild?
She's gonna sue.
Is this who you're talking about?
Lynn, yeah, Lynn Forrester. She's calling me a liar because she's saying that she set Dershowitz. See, I saw Dershowitz coming in and out of the house.
Yeah, she introduced Epystien.
She's saying
Dershowitz,
it's not possible.
She claims that anyway.
She didn't. Yeah, she did not. She did not. But she wants to think so. So their story is that she introduced them as a gift from Wexner, because every year Wexner would give a gift to Epstein, and this year he's such a wonderful gift, Dershowitz.
Look, I was introduced to him by the Lady Rothschild.
So she gave him as a gift, But anyway, she said to me, he was assigned to me to protect me because my dad died. And I was like, I don't understand this. And I said, well, what happened to your dad? She said, those cunts pushed him. And I thought she said off the baby Ghislaine. So for years I thought it was the Lady Ghislaine. She said those cunts pushed him off of the baby Ghislaine.
People who knew him at the time, who worked with him, have said to me, Robert Maxwell thought he actually owned the Mossad, like he owned newspapers, everything else. That he'd bought them with his millions of stolen money he was feeding to them and so on. With these incredible deals he was making with these people, he was bringing them to and so on. That didn't work with the Mossad. They thought he'd become, what we call a loose cannon.
So then she says to me, my dad was a very powerful man, and, he was very important. She said, Maria, you don't understand. And then she's showing me, who she grew up with and how powerful he was and how much money they had. And then she goes on to tell me, she said, Maria, and this is true, she said, and she showed me, she had passports. Get this. I don't know how this is legal. She had a passport, a French passport, an English passport, an Israeli passport, an American passport, and there was one other. I'm trying to think of what the other one was.
Get your passport to the ocean. So you will have 2 passports.
And I was like, I thought you were only allowed to be citizen of 2 countries or something. I didn't know. And she's like, oh, no, because of my dad. I'm a citizen of all these nations. Later, when she was talking to me about something one day, she said that the Rothschilds were the greatest protectors of her family. And she wasn't talking about Lynn Forrester, by the way.
She was talking about the other one.
The people that are in her. Yeah.
Well,
and
Lynn
she
Forrester
said they're the greatest. They've always been the greatest.
Rothschild family, and that was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So yeah, if she was talking about this to you before then,
it was
she
through.
definitely didn't mean her.
No, it was through Ghislaine. I mean, it was that Lynn Forrester, I believe. Didn't she hook up through them?
She
I
met
the Rothschilds
Evelyn de
through
Rothschild, who's her husband, through Henry Kissinger at, I believe, a Bilderberg
Yeah.
meeting.
Oh, through Kissinger. Okay. Yeah, of course.
Clinton has a very warm friendship with none other than Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. You know Lynn of the infamous Rothschild banking family. She was introduced to her Rothschild husband by none other than Henry Kissinger at none other than the 1998 Bilderberg Group conference. For real, that is how Lynn became a member of the Rothschild family, a family who has been under scrutiny for centuries for using their banking wealth to control the outcomes of wars and massive global shifts in power. You don't get more establishy than Lynn Rothschild.
Anybody who was not Jewish, and you're right about this, but the way they spoke about them, it was really horrifying. And it showed me a great deal about how these people truly believe that they're chosen to do something here. I don't know. It's unbelievable to me. I mean, and it was every one of them, the way they spoke. And one time I heard Isabel say to her mother, Eileen, Mommy, why do you call Maria a nobody? And she said, honey, Isabel, Maria is not a Jew. She is a nobody.
Openly talks about how only Jews are human and the rest of human beings are like cattle, basically.
Like they trusted each other, but they don't trust people outside their network. So it's not just that they're Jewish, it's that they're connected. I mean, it's so obvious.
They not like us. 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 You think the Bay gon' let you disrespect Pop, nigga? I think that Oakland show gon' be your last stop, nigga. They cold foul, I don't know why you still pretending. What is the owl? Bird niggas and bird bitches, go. The audience not dumb, shape the stories how you want. Hey Drake, they're not slow. Rabbit hole is still deep, I can go further, I promise. Ain't that something? B-Rest, that's for bitchin'. You Malibu, most wanted, ain't no love boy, you ball boy, fresh Gatorade or something. Since 2009, I had this bitch jumping. You niggas will get a wedgie, be flipped over your boxes or over your foe. The other vaginal option, pussy, nigga better straighten they posture. Got famous all up in content, might write this for the doctrine. Tell a pop star quit hiding, fuck a caption, won't action, no accident. I'm hands on, he fuck around, get polished. Fucked on Wayne growing, he was in jail, that's conniving. Then get his face tatted like a bitch apologizing. I'm glad D-Rose came home, y'all didn't deserve him neither. From Alondra down to Central, nigga better not speak on Serena. And your homeboy needs subpoena, that predator moving flocks. That name gotta be registered and placed on neighborhood watch. I lean on you niggas like another line of walk. Yeah, it's all eyes on me and I'ma send it up the pot. Ay, put the roll label on me, I'ma get them dropped. Ay, sweet chin music and I won't pass the...
Jeffrey Epstein's temple looks exactly like a place called Hammam Yalbuga. Now, we go to Hammam Yalbuga's Wikipedia page. It says, Yalbuga is a Mamluk-era public bath in Aleppo, Syria. It was built in 1491. So this is a place that offers massages. You can go to a sauna here. And the connection that strikes out to me right away is massages is how Jeffrey Epstein groomed his young 14 to 16-year-old victims. He had a private mansion over there in Palm Beach, and what he would do is he would pay recruiters to go out and find women and say, hey, there's this rich guy in Palm Beach, he'll give you $200 if you go in and give him a massage. Only catch is you got to do it in your underwear. So this is how he'd invite girls into his mansion. They'd give him the massage, and of course Epstein would offer more money for a little bit more than just a massage. And this is how he kind of figured out what he could get away with. The guy is super into massages himself. It's just an interesting connection. All right, so we go on the Wikipedia page and we click Mamluk era. What is that? On its Wikipedia page, we see Mamluk is Arabic, meaning property. It's an Arabic designation for slaves. The term is most commonly used to refer to non-Muslim slave soldiers and Muslim rulers of slave origin. So what is Jeffrey Epstein guilty of? He's guilty of sex trafficking, basically slaves. And what is the architecture that he styles his temple off of? But Mamluk architecture, which is indicative to slave culture. Alright, so another interesting connection with the Hammam Yalbuga is right here on the Wikipedia page. It says, it is located next to the entrance of the citadel of Aleppo on the banks of the Kiwak River. So what is the citadel of Aleppo? So according to Wikipedia, the citadel of Aleppo is considered to be one of the oldest and largest castles in the world. So then we scroll down to the history section of the citadel of Aleppo, and it says the recently discovered temple of the ancient storm god Hadad dates use of the hill to the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. So who is Hadad? Go to Hadad's Wikipedia page, and I kid you not, I can't make this up. Hadad is another name for Baal. It says Hadad was also called Pidar, Repu, or Baal Siphon, or simply referred to as Baal. I think it's worth noting that Baal is also used as the title for other gods as well, but still, the bull was the symbolic animal of Hadad, which also relates to Moloch. Well, the common conspiracy here that we hear all the time is that these billionaires, they are Baal worshippers, Moloch worshippers, and Satanists. So how does all of this tie into the evidence that we are now seeing coming from Epstein's Island? All right, so let's look at the side-by-side pictures of Epstein's temple and the bathhouse over in Aleppo. Look at the similarities. It's unbelievable. We can say at the very least they are resembling the same architecture, and the architecture is, in fact, the Mamluks. So who are the Mamluks? The Mamluks were a class of people, mostly of Turkic or Caucasian ethnicity, who served as slave soldiers between the 13th and 16th century in the Islamic world spanning from Egypt to Syria. The name Mameluke is derived from the Arabic word meaning slave. So there are two distinct periods during the Mamluk reigns. The first period saw the Bahri dynasty that ruled Egypt between 1250 and 1382 AD. This dynasty would import young slaves, mainly Kipchak Turks from Central Asia, and groom them to be warriors. And the second period saw the rise of Borhi Circassian dynasty, which ruled from 1382 to 1517 AD. The Circassian Mamluks were the white slaves that were taken from the northern Caucasus Mountains and traded in slave markets. They were captured in their early childhood, usually around 13 years of age, by the sultans who raised them in special military camps to become soldiers for the ruling class. So let's look at this quote from Voltaire, what he has to say about the Circassians. The Circassians are poor, and their daughters are beautiful, and indeed it is them they chiefly trade. And of all those who are wealthy enough to purchase and maintain such precious merchandise, these maidens are very honorably and virtually instructed how to fondle and caress men, and how to heighten by the most voluptuous artifices the pleasures of their disdainful masters, for whom they are designed. So what is the significance between the Mamluk architecture and the relation to Epstein's temple? The Mamluk style of architecture was considered eclectic. Throughout the Mamluk Empire, you will find many buildings, especially mosques, using what we know today as the oblak style. Oblak is an architectural style involving alternating or fluctuating rows of light and dark stone. Although the oblak style isn't unique to the Mamluks, they utilized the oblak lighting effects heavily, which was a dominant feature throughout their empire. They basically made it their own. So this architectural decision was also pushed by the Sufis, or Islamic mystics, the so-called illuminated ones. Here are some quotes from a couple of Sufis from that era. Reason is God's shadow. God is the sun. What power has the shadow before the sun? The cosmos is all darkness. It is illumined only by the manifestation of God in it. Whoever sees the cosmos and does not contemplate him in it or by it or before it or after it, it is indeed of light and is veiled from the sun of gnosis by the clouds of created things. And what's so fascinating is these people, they were obsessed with the sun, and what do we find also on Jeffrey Epstein's island but a giant occult painting of the sun? So yeah, right here we see an image of the sun on Jeffrey Epstein's island, Little St. James. This is drone footage taken by a YouTuber named Rusty Shackelford, who's done great work. He actually purchased a drone, went out to the Virgin Islands himself, and got a lot of amazing video of this island. So what is the meaning then behind Epstein's temple? Epstein's temple was an ode to the Mamluk era of when captured children were taken as slaves to do the bidding of the elite class. Young boys were taken and groomed to later become soldiers, while young girls were taken and groomed to later become personal concubines of their masters. Do you now see the parallel between the Mamluks and Epstein?